Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe to watch our next video. Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe to watch our next video.
Thanks for watching. Follow a brighter destiny for more powerful stories, and don't forget to subscribe.
Bye. Marcus Hale reached the entrance of the Aurora Crest Lounge at 9:14 in the morning on a Tuesday when Denver International Airport was already thick with delayed flights and short tempers. He wore a charcoal button-down, tucked into pressed gray slacks, clean leather shoes, and a simple black watch that told time and nothing else. His hair was cut close. His face was calm, almost unreadable, the kind of calm that comes from a man who has learned not to waste his expressions on people who haven't earned them. He carried a slim leather folio under one arm, nothing more, no entourage, no name tag. No reason on paper for anyone to look at him twice. He joined the line behind 4 other travelers and waited without checking his phone, without sighing, without doing any of the small performances people do when they want to be noticed. When his turn came, he held out his boarding pass. The young woman at the podium, Sarah Doyle, scanned it. The screen turned green. First-class access confirmed. "Good morning, sir," she said. "Welcome to Aurora Crest." She had barely gotten the words out when a second voice sliced across the counter. "One moment, please." Renee Calloway stepped out from behind the marble host stand, blazer buttoned, lounge pin gleaming above her heart, her posture the posture of a woman who had rehearsed authority until it looked like grace. Her eyes went first to Marcus's shoes, then his slacks, then lingered on his face a half-second longer than they needed to. "I'll need to see identification," she said, in a voice so polished it almost didn't sound like an accusation. Almost. Marcus handed it over without comment. She turned the license over in her hand, studied the photo, studied him, studied the photo again. "The system already confirmed my access," he said quietly. "We've had some irregularities lately," Renee answered. "People using accounts that aren't theirs. It happens more than you'd think." Behind him, the line had grown to 15 people. A man near the back checked his watch and exhaled loudly, as if the holdup were Marcus's fault, and not the woman holding his assistants hostage at the counter. At the next podium over, a man in a rumpled fleece vest lifted his phone, got a glance and a smile, and walked through without being asked for a single additional document. A woman behind him gave only her last name and a laugh about needing coffee, and the agent waved her in like an old friend. Marcus watched them pass. Then he looked back at Renee. "Does this apply to every guest?" he asked, "or only some of them?" A tightness moved across the corner of her mouth before she caught it. "Our staff exercises professional judgment to protect the member experience," she said. Professional judgment, Marcus repeated, the way a man repeats a phrase he intends to remember exactly. She handed back his license. "You understand why we have to be careful," she said, as if she were doing him a kindness. He understood. He had understood it in rooms like this one, before he ever wore a suit that fit, before anyone ever called him sir. He could have ended it in one sentence. He had the kind of sentence that would have turned her posture to water in under 3 seconds. A sentence like that only teaches a person how to treat one man correctly. It teaches them nothing about how they treat everyone else when nobody powerful is standing in front of them. Renee lifted her tablet. Her thumb moved. A small amber flag appeared beside his profile. Extended monitoring, service caution. Sarah saw it over her shoulder. Something crossed her face for exactly 1 second, not surprise. Something closer to dread before she looked down at her screen and said nothing. "All right," Renee said, as if she were granting a favor instead of honoring a paid reservation. "You may go in." She turned to an attendant standing nearby. "Take him to the East Room." The attendant hesitated. "The main floor still has open seating," she said. Renee's eyes did not soften. "The East Room," she repeated. Marcus lifted his folio and walked through the doorway beneath brushed silver letters that spelled Aurora Crest. By. He had chosen that name 18 years earlier because he wanted travelers to feel like they were arriving somewhere, not being sorted somewhere. By. This morning, the letters looked less like a welcome and more like a question nobody at the front desk had thought to ask themselves in a long time. By. What Renee Calloway did not know was that the man she had just flagged for monitoring was the founder and majority owner of Aurora Crest Hospitality Group, and that he had built this company from a single 60-seat lounge in Kansas City with money he'd saved working overnight shifts as a teenager. By. He had not come to Denver to win an argument at a podium. He had come to find out what happened to ordinary people when there was no chairman's name to protect them. By. 3 days earlier, Marcus had been sitting alone in his office with 2 folders open under the desk lamp. By. The first was Denver's quarterly performance report. 94% guest satisfaction. Lowest complaint volume in the Western region. By. Renee Calloway's name was listed for an Internal Excellence Award at the bottom of the final page. By. Everything about it looked clean. Too clean. In the specific way a report looks clean when somebody has been sanding down the truth before it reaches a desk like his. By. The second folder was harder to read. It held 4 complaints the Denver office had already closed out. By. One came from Denise Coleman, an ACE and ICU nurse and a single mother raising 2 boys on her own, who wrote that she had been asked for identification 3 separate times inside of 20 minutes, even after showing her boarding pass, her license, and the card the ticket was purchased on. By. The internal note on her file read, "Guest displayed heightened sensitivity to stat verification." Nowhere in that sentence did it mention that she had been questioned 3 times. By. It had simply relocated the problem from the lounge to her personality. Another complaint came from James Whitfield, a decorated Army veteran and a single father who had raised his 14-year-old son alone since his wife passed 4 years earlier. By. James had been steered to a back corner near a service hallway while window tables sat empty, and when he asked why, an employee marked him in the system as confrontational. By. He had attached nothing but a 2-line note, "I did not raise my voice." By. I only asked a question. Marcus read twice. The second time made it worse, not better. By. An anonymous email had also landed in his inbox 9 days before that, from someone claiming to be a former stockroom worker at the Denver lounge. By. It offered no threats and asked for nothing. It said only this: they are swapping blood product out through the loading corridor before every audit. Don't announce yourself. Sit near door 6 after breakfast service and watch. By. Attached was a single grainy photograph of sealed cases of imported cheese and prime beef being wheeled through a service door that, according to inventory records, should have led straight to the buffet. By. A photograph was not proof. A timestamp could be misread. A transfer could, in theory, be authorized. By. Marcus had built this company on the discipline of not confusing suspicion with thanks, so instead of making a phone call that would summon a dozen frightened executives, he closed both folders, crossed to a cabinet in the corner of his office. By. And took out the same watch and the same plain planned black folio he had carried the year he made assistant manager's talker at 24, back when a supervisor once told him deliveries belonged at the loading dock, and only apologized after Stelt said his name out loud. By. His father had told him that night not to let people make him dress a certain way just to earn basic decency. By. Marcus had never needed the reminder since. He simply hadn't needed it in a while. By. He booked a same-day flight through Denver under his own name. Only his compliance director, Daniel Reyes, knew the real purpose of the trip. By. Reyes, a food safety physician named Dr. Angela Wren, and 2 compliance specialists were already waiting 1 concourse over, ready to move the moment Marcus called, and not 1 second before. By. Back in the present, Marcus followed the attendant past the bright main floor, where the carpet was thick and the windows stretched floor to ceiling, and into a narrower hallway where the light dimmed and the carpet thinned. By the room they called the East Wing had 2 outlets taped off as broken, chairs angled away from the tarmac view, and a service door marked 6 directly across from the seat Renee had chosen for him. The anonymous tipster had told him exactly where to sit. Renee, without knowing it, had just placed him in the best possible position to watch. He set his folio down and looked around. Denise Coleman sat 3 tables, still in her hospital scrubs from a shift that had clearly run long, her posture the exhausted posture of someone who had learned to save her energy for things that mattered more than a lounge chair. James Whitfield sat near the partition with a connecting flight folder tucked under one arm, glancing at his watch because his son was waiting for a call. An older couple, Walter and Ruth Simmons, sat near the back, Walter's cane resting against his knee, both of their boarding passes open on Ruth's phone as if they'd learned to keep proof ready before anyone asked for it. Every one of them had scanned green at the door. Every one of them had ended up on this side of the partition. A few minutes later, 3 young men in matching hoodies and sneakers walked in laughing, and nobody looked twice at their clothes. An attendant smiled and pointed them toward the open table near the buffet, and coffee appeared at their elbows before they'd even asked for it. Clothing, Marcus thought, watching one of them drop a duffel bag onto a second chair, had never actually been the rule. The meaning people decided to attach to the person wearing it that was the rule. Sarah Doyle came by a few minutes later with the glass of water she hadn't been asked to bring. She set it down and kept her voice low. "I'm sorry about the front desk," she said. Marcus glanced toward Renee, who stood near the main podium scrolling through her tablet. "What does the amber flag mean?" he asked. Sarah's hand stilled on the tray. "You saw that." "I was standing right in front of the screen," he said. She looked over her shoulder before she answered. "It means staff are told to watch a guest closely. Don't offer the premium menu unless they specifically ask. Note how long they stay. If they talk to other guests, tell a manager." "What makes someone qualify for it?" he asked. "There's no actual written rule," Sarah said. "Then what do they tell you when they add it?" She looked down at the water glass. "Doesn't match the booking profile," she said. "Needs extra observation. Sometimes they just say the person doesn't look like our usual guest." His face didn't move, but something behind his eyes went very still. "Have you ever reported that?" he asked. She opened her mouth to answer, and that was the exact moment Renee appeared at the table. "Is there a problem?" Renee asked. "He was asking about the service code," Sarah said. "Guests don't need explanations of internal procedure," Renee said, her voice cooling by several degrees, and Sarah's eyes dropped to the floor. Marcus filed the moment away, the same way he'd filed the first one, quietly, without a flicker of reaction, the way a man built a case instead of building an argument. 11 minutes later, food finally arrived at his table. A chicken wrap sat warm only at the center, lettuce wilted into dark folds, a fruit cup with cloudy liquid pooled at the bottom, coffee gone thin and filmy on top. 30 feet away, on the main floor, an attendant was refilling a silver tray of smoked salmon and setting out warm pastries under soft white lights. Marcus had written this company's first food safety manual, back when Aurora Crest had exactly 2 locations, and he did not need to taste the wrap to know it had been mishandled. He turned the yogurt cup over. There was a faint ring of dried adhesive where a date label used to be. Across the aisle, service door 6 opened. Derek Combs, the stockroom supervisor, pushed a cart through with the easy confidence of a man done up to this so many times it no longer felt like stealing into him. 3 sealed cases sat on top: prime beef, imported cheese, bakery goods with Aurora Crest's own vendor code stamped on the side. He scanned each barcode against a wall reader. A green light blinked, transferred to service floor. The screen read. Then he pushed the cart straight through the loading door instead, where a man in an event company jacket, was already waiting to swap the cases onto another cart. By. No envelope changed hands. It looked, to anyone who wasn't watching for it, like nothing at all. By. Marcus was waiting for it. Denise Coleman lifted her fruit cup and frowned, then flagged down an attendant. By. This smells off, she said quietly. The attendant didn't check the seal, didn't call the kitchen. By. She simply typed something into her tablet and moved on. Marcus caught a glimpse of the screen as she walked past. By. Guest dissatisfied with presentation, it read. No safety concern observed. A possible warning about spoiled food had just been quietly renamed as a matter of taste. By. He rose with his empty glass and drifted toward the self-service station, close enough to hear Derek Combs coaching a newer employee at the complaint terminal. By. Never write unsafe unless someone's actually gotten sick, Derek was saying. Don't write discrimination. Don't write uneven treatment. By. Those words trigger a compliant review. Keep it clean, keep it operational. The younger employee asked what she should write instead, and tapped Restructuring on the screen. Guest misunderstood benefits. Guest had an emotional response, unresponsive after explanation, like he was reading off a menu instead of rewriting the truth. By. From the main floor came a raised voice. A man in a fleece vest was complaining loudly that his coffee had taken 10 minutes, and an attendant rushed over, apologized twice, and added loyalty points to his account without a single note going into any file. By. Denise's quiet, specific concern about spoiled fruit had become a reason to monitor her. This man's loud complaint about lukewarm coffee had become a reason to reward him. By. 2 guests, 2 records, 2 entirely different versions of the same morning. Sarah returned a while later with a second glass of water and slid a folded scrap of paper underneath it, her hand trembling once before it steadied. By. Marcus waited until she stepped away to unfold it. 4 case numbers were written in careful print, one about missing date labels, one about repeated identification checks on black guests, one about Derek altering inventory logs, and one about Renee closing complaints before regional compliance ever saw them. By. When Sarah drifted back near his table, under the excuse of checking the napkin holder, he asked her quietly if the numbers were hers. By. She nodded. My hours got cut from 5 shifts to 3 about 8 months ago, she said. By. When I asked why, the note said I was having trouble adjusting to service direction. By. Why did you stay? He asked. She looked past him, toward Denise and James and the Simmonses, seated where staff believed fewer people would ever notice. By. Because if everyone who sees this leaves, she said, there's nobody left to tell people they aren't imagining it. By. Renee appeared again before he could ask anything more. Employees aren't permitted to discuss internal matters with guests, she said. By. She brought me water, Marcus answered. His eyes stayed on Sarah until she walked away, and then Renee turned toward the loud man at the coffee station, still complaining while a fresh cup was being prepared for him. By. Are black guests more likely to be marked as confrontational here? Marcus asked. Because we don't see race, Renee said. By. We evaluate behavior. Where's his behavior note then? Marcus asked, nodding toward the man at the counter. By. Renee had no answer ready, so she gave none at all. The lounge door opened again, and Walter and Ruth Simmons walked in together. Walter leaning carefully on his cane, Ruth close enough to steady him without making a show of it. By. Their passes scanned green. Renee's eyes moved to the cane, then to Ruth's plain travel coat, then finally to their faces. By. Seat them in the east wing, she told an attendant. It'll be more appropriate. Pool tables sat empty across the main floor the entire time she said it. By. The aisle back to the east wing narrowed near the partition, forcing Walter to turn sideways and get a cane over the wheel of a service cart, his jaw tightening for one silent second, before Ruth's hand found his elbow. By. Could we sit over there instead? Ruth asked, gesturing toward the windows. My husband could use a little more room. By. Those tables are reserved for priority members, the attendant said. And Ruth looked down at the first-class boarding passes already open on her phone, weighed the fight against the fatigue of having fought it 100 times before, and simply said, "All right, bye." A tray arrived at their table. Minutes later, the same warm wrap, the same wilted lettuce, the same cloudy fruit. Bye. Walter reached for his medication case and told Ruth he was supposed to eat before taking his pills. Bye. He had just started unwrapping the sandwich when Marcus stood, crossed the aisle, without hurrying, and stopped a respectful distance away. Bye. "Sir, please hold off on that," he said. "Mine came from the same batch, and something wasn't right with it." Bye. Renee arrived almost instantly, before anyone had even checked the food. She didn't ask what Ruth had smelled. Bye. She looked only at Marcus. "Return to your seat," she said. "You need to stop approaching other guests." Bye. "He didn't bother us," Ruth said. "He just stopped my husband from eating something that might be spoiled." Bye. Renee barely glanced at her. "We've had several concerns about this guest's behavior," she said. Bye. "Concerns from whom?" Marcus asked. "I'm not required to name other guests," she answered. "Then name the behavior," he said. Bye. "You've approached people uninvited. You've created tension. You've challenged staff." "Which of those," he asked quietly, "created a safety risk?" Bye. Sarah stepped forward from the podium, pale but steady. "We should stop serving that batch until someone checks the temperature," she said. Bye. Renee turned on her fully. "Are you taking a guest's side against your manager?" Fear crossed Sarah's face and then, to her own visible surprise, settled into something firmer. Bye. "I'm taking the side of what's safe," she said. Renee lifted her radio. "Call airport security," she said. Bye. "This guest is interfering with staff." 2 officers arrived within minutes, calm and unhurried, and one of them asked simply, "Tell us what happened." Bye. Renee's version came out smooth, polished by Spundas and Brolide included a sentence into a complaint system. Bye. "He refused staff direction, approached other members without permission, created a tense environment," she said. Bye. She didn't mention his valid ticket. She didn't mention the amber flag she'd added herself, or the untested tray, or Sarah's warning, or Ruth's statement. Bye. "Has anyone accused him of threatening someone?" the officer asked. "No," Renee admitted. "Did anyone hear him raise his voice?" Bye. Silence answered before she did. "What policy," Marcus asked quietly, "stops a guest from warning another guest about food that might not be safe?" Bye. "This isn't a courtroom," Renee said. "No," he answered, "it's a lounge serving food to the public." Bye. "That requires clearer answers than the ones you're giving." He reached into his folio, took out his phone, and called Daniel Reyes. Bye. "Lock every editing privilege at this location," he said. "Preserve 90 days of camera footage." Bye. "Freeze all vendor transactions tied to this lounge. Stop food service immediately, and arrange transport for every guest here to the partner lounge on Concourse A, with today's fees refunded in full." Bye. Renee stared at him the entire time, and Derek Combs, standing near the kitchen entrance, went very still at the words "Service Door 6." Bye. An officer stepped calmly into Derek's path before moved toward the corridor. "That area is being preserved for review, sir. Please stay where you are." Bye. Renee's mouth opened. "Who exactly do you think you are, giving orders in my building?" she asked. Bye. Marcus ended the call without answering her, because the answer was already 12 minutes away, and walking through the concourse. Bye. Daniel Reyes arrived with Dr. Angela Wren and 2 compliance specialists carrying sealed evidence cases, and the room went quiet around him. Bye. "Editing access has been locked," Reyes announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Camera files are under preservation." Bye. "Senior leadership has been notified and is standing by for your report, Mr. Hale." The lounge fell into a different silence than the one before. Bye. Renee looked at Reyes, then at Marcus, then up at the silver letters mounted above the podium, as if they had rearranged themselves while she wasn't watching. Bye. "I didn't know who you were," she said, her voice suddenly smaller than it had been all morning. Bye. "My ticket told you everything you needed to know to do your job correctly," Marcus answered. Bye. Dr. Wren inserted a calibrated thermometer into the sandwich, still sitting untouched on Walter's tray, and waited. Bye. The reading came back outside the safe range. Nobody spoke. Marcus's identity had changed the temperature of the room. Bye. But it hadn't changed the most important fact. Standing in front of everyone, a 71-year-old man on a cane had nearly eaten food that wasn't safe, because staff decided which side of a partition he belonged on before he'd said a single word. Bye. Reyes moved fast after that. He shut down new admissions at the front desk, arranged immediate access to the partner lounge, and covered every meal, every excess fee, and every inconvenience without asking a single guest to wait for an apology first. Bye. Marcus bedied Walter while an airport medic checked his blood pressure, found nothing alarming, and confirmed he was steady enough to eat once a sealed, verified meal arrived. Bye. Ruth's hand didn't leave her husband's shoulder the entire time. Across the room, Doctor worked through the coolers and trays with quiet precision. Bye. The wraps had been held well outside safe temperature. Several yogurt cups and salads were missing date labels entirely. Bye. The product brands in the cooler didn't match the purchase invoices. Reyes pulled up on his tablet in real time. Bye. This is being made to look worse than it was, Renee said, arms folded. Everything we did was meant to protect the guest experience. Bye. Marcus turned to face her. Why did every guest who came in after me get through without extra identification? He asked. Bye. Each interaction is different, she said. Why were black guests with valid tickets repeatedly sent to this room while the main floor sat half empty? Bye. We make seating decisions based on operational judgment, she answered. Why was a food safety complaint rewritten as dissatisfaction with presentation? Bye. Her eyes flicked toward Reyes, searching for someone else to answer for her, and found no one. Bye. Staff have to interpret what this mean, she said. People describe things emotionally. Marcus held up her own tablet, which Reyes had preserved and unlocked. Bye. Presentation mismatch, it read. Confirm behavior before extended service. That isn't behavior, he said. That's how you looked at me before I'd done anything at all. Bye. Derek Combs tried next. Those cases leaving through door 6 were surplus, he said. We sent them to a partner event, so nothing would go to waste. Bye. The system says they were logged as transferred to the service floor, Reyes said, pulling up the record. Bye. Where's the transfer order? There should be one. It may not have uploaded, Derek said, his confidence thinning fast. Bye. Record both explanations separately, Marcus told Reyes, and compare them against the footage and the vendor payments. Bye. Are you firing us right here in front of everyone? Renee asked, straightening as if she'd already decided public embarrassment was the only language left available to her. Bye. You and Mr. Combs are suspended from all systems and duties pending a full investigation, Marcus said. Bye. You'll receive written allegations, access to the evidence, and the opportunity to respond with representation. Bye. After what you think I did, she asked, almost daring him to say otherwise. Fair process isn't reserved for people I ought to agree with, he answered. Bye. Near the podium, Sarah stood very still. I gave you those case numbers, she said quietly. Does that put me in trouble too? Bye. Preserve her schedule, her pay, and her personnel file, Marcus told Reyes. No changes without compliance, sign off. Bye. She'll be interviewed like everyone else, he told her directly, and whatever you reported will be reviewed on the evidence, not on how it makes anyone feel. Bye. Something in her shoulders finally loosened. Before she left for the partner lounge, Ruth Simmons paused near the partition, looking over the worn carpet and the narrow aisle where her husband's cane had nearly caught on a cartwheel. Bye. You didn't need to own this place for what happened to be wrong, she told Marcus. Bye. I know, he said. That's exactly why this couldn't end with one manager and one bad morning. Bye. The investigation ran for 5 days before it stopped being about one lounge at all. Bye. Reyes and his team pulled 90 days of camera footage, 14 months of inventory records, complaint histories, staff schedules, and vendor payments. Bye. The told the same story on repeat premium beef cheese and bakery product moving out through door 6 during quiet stretch at sweet sold to event company run by an old acquaintance of Derek's, who then served that same food at private receptions while Aurora Crest's own books showed it had gone into the lounge. By investigators eventually traced $187,412 in missing inventory invoices spread across small transactions, specifically designed never to look dramatic on their own. The complaint records held the deeper wound. More than 140 guest reports had been quietly closed, miscategorized, or rewritten until the original concern disappeared entirely. Repeated identification checks became sensitivity to routine verification. A warning about spoiled food became dissatisfaction with presentation. A calm question about seating became confrontational behavior. When compared against our show footage, most of the guest phones labeled full difficult had raised their voice at all. And several had stayed seated the entire time a manager stood over them. Black guests, and guests seen as somehow not matching the room's expectations. A tired single mother in scrubs, single father with the folder under his arm, an old man with a cane were flagged for extra verification at a rate the data made impossible to explain away as coincidence. And were steered toward the back of the room, far more often than anyone else, no matter how empty the windows were. Renee Calloway had never taken $1 from Derek's scheme, but the investigation confirmed she had approved the guest classification system, permitted complaint rewrites, ignored food safety warnings, cut Sarah's hours after her reports, and signed off on performance summaries she knew weren't accurate. Her polish had never hidden the chaos underneath, it had protected it. Derek's employment was terminated, and his financial records were referred for further review. Renee was dismissed for discriminatory treatment, retaliation, concealment safety concerns, and false reporting. A regional manager who had received one of Sarah's earlier warnings and simply let it sit was removed from any supervisory role. Marcus refused to treat every employee as equally responsible. Staff who had knowingly altered records or hidden unsafe food faced discipline based on the evidence against them specifically. Employees who had only followed instructions without profiting from any of it were interviewed, retrained, and given a closer review instead of losing their jobs outright. Some admitted quietly that they had simply been afraid of losing their own hours if they said anything. He didn't excuse that fear. He also didn't confuse it with theft. Sarah's 5 shifts were restored, her lost wages repaid, the false note removed from her file, and she was invited to help design the company's new complaint review process. Marcus met with her privately before he left Denver. "What matters," he told her, "isn't that you helped me. It's that you told the truth back when you still thought I was just another passenger." She didn't get promoted into management overnight. Instead, she moved into a new role, service integrity coordinator, under an experienced director, and started a year-long leadership program the following month. The Denver lounge stayed closed for 6 weeks. Contractors tore out the partitions separating the east wing from the main floor, replaced the thinning carpet, widened the narrow aisle by the service corridor, and repaired both broken outlets. Every food case was scanned at the loading dock, scanned again at the service floor, and scanned a 3rd time before it ever left the building. At training tables set up along one wall, staff practiced writing down exactly what a guest did and did, with a second reviewer checking every complaint before it could be closed out. The old flags presentation mismatch, extended monitoring, service caution were deleted from the system entirely, and nothing replaced them. Walter and Ruth Simmons came in for a review session before the lounge reopened. Nobody asked them to pose for photographs under the company logo or say anything nice for a camera. Ruth walked the new floor plan, and accidentally whether a guest seated in the back would get the exact same food as a guest by the windows. By same access, same quality, the new manager told her. Keep it that way, Ruth said. By Walter tested the widened aisle with his cane and chose a chair with firm armrests near the front. By People shouldn't have to explain their own bodies before a room becomes usable to them, he said, and his suggestion became part of the final layout. By On the morning the lounge reopened, Sarah Doyle stood behind the same podium where Marcus' identity had once been questioned over a valid ticket. By Her uniform hadn't changed. The smaller line under her name badge had Service Integrity Coordinator. It read now. By Marcus walked in that morning, wearing the same charcoal shirt, the same pressed slacks, the same quiet, unremarkable calm, with no assistant and no warning call ahead of him. By Sarah recognized him instantly, but she didn't send for a manager or open some private side entrance. By She simply held out her hand for his phone. The scanner chimed. The screen turned green. By Welcome to Aurora Crest, sir, she said. That's all, he asked. Valid ticket, she said, allowing herself a small, real smile. By That's all it's ever supposed to be. He stepped inside. Denise Coleman was there that morning, off shift, eating from the spread business suit tables over, nobody watching her plate any closer than theirs. By A young father in a hoodie walked in behind Marcus with his daughter on his hip and got the exact same scan, the exact same greeting, the exact same choice of any open seat in the room. There was no back wing left to send anyone to. Light reached every table the same way. Marcus walked to the chair where he'd first sat 6 weeks earlier and set his folio down beside it. The service door was still there, across the room. Removing it would have only been another way of pretending nothing had ever happened near it. What had changed was everything around it. A camera covered the corridor now. The inventory matched the shelves. Employees had a way to raise a concern that didn't run through the one person most likely to bury it. There was no hidden corner left where an honest person could be quietly isolated and told they'd imagined the whole thing. Near the staff entrance, where guests would never see it, one sentence from Ruth Simmons had been printed and mounted on the wall. Respect is not an upgrade benefit. It wasn't there for marketing. It was there for the people who put on a uniform every morning before anyone important was supposed to be watching. Marcus stood under the silver letters for a moment before he left for his gate. 6 weeks earlier, he had stood in this exact spot, wondering who this company deserved to walk beneath those letters without being questioned. Now he thought about all the people who would come through that door with no title, no assistant, and nobody powerful standing behind them to make things right if they didn't. A company doesn't prove what it actually values by how it treats the most recognizable person in the room. It proves it in the moment an employee genuinely believes no one important is watching at all. If this story meant something to you, hit like and subscribe so more of these reach the people who need them. Tell me in the comments which moment hit you the hardest. This story is a work of fiction created for entertainment and educational purposes only. All characters, names, businesses, and events depicted are entirely fictional and do not represent any real person, living or dead, or any actual establishment. Any resemblance to real persons, organizations, or events is purely coincidental. This content is intended to explore themes of human dignity, workplace and social justice through narrative storytelling. It does not make factual claims about any individual, company, or institution.